All set.
Okay. We on? Excellent. Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance for Tuesday, January 22nd, to order. First item on the agenda is public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? Seeing none. Item number 2, approve minutes of special meeting minutes of December 5th, 2018. On these minutes, just a recollection that these were regarding the Mulberry Point Water Main Extension Project special meeting that we had. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Comments? Revisions? I think I had one, actually had two. On page number 1, just a correction on the last paragraph, third line, where it says the principal for the company, just to make sure it's clear, especially on a finance committee. Principal would be AL. And then page number 3, and again, it's the 1, 2, 3. It's the like the 6th paragraph down, where it has overtime. Ms. Malvasi explained that residents can opt to pay the amount all at once or overtime, being separated. We don't want to think that there's overtime with 2% interest. I think that's it. Does anyone else have any comments, corrections?
Not having been at the meeting, I did pick up something that piqued my curiosity.
Sure.
On page 5, the state grant for Park and Rec, the state will reimburse the town $54,000 for the bus. I wanted to know the basis for that reimbursement.
These
Do we have that?
we're on this.
Page 5?
We're on the special meeting minutes.
Oh, we're on the special meeting.
Yeah, but you can hold that question. For
I'll
the
hold
next
that. That's regular meeting.
meeting. That works. Anything else on the special meeting and this is for December 5th.
Did you
Okay.
guys already catch the typo of the project with the 2 T's and a comma?
No,
Okay,
Nope,
so
you caught that
on
one.
page 1, it says, he added that second paragraph, he added that 83% of residents in the area committed to the project. So just get rid of the comma and the other T.
oh, got it. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Okay, hearing nothing more, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain. I
Abstain.
didn't participate.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2, or I should say, sub-item 2, regular meeting minutes of December 17th, 2018. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Corrections, comments,
There's my
revisions? Go ahead. Now you're up.
On page 5, I would just appreciate knowing what the basis of the reimbursement is on the state grant. We had, they're reimbursing us $54,000 for a Park and Rec bus.
On page 5, sorry, I'm trying to find it here.
Jim,
Yes,
that's the regional transportation grant that we get from the state. We've gotten that on numerous occasions. And I think our contribution was about $18,000 or $14,000. And the state picks up the balance of that. It's part of the regional transportation funding.
Regional transportation. Thank you.
excellent, thanks. Anybody else have anything? I took a quick look through to just see there's always areas in here that someone needs to provide an update or get more information, and I didn't see anything that was missed. I think we got everything we needed. Yes.
I'd like to know under town officials that Robert Hartman's a pension committee member, not its chair.
This is on page 1.
Yeah.
Yes. Committee chair, right. Thank you.
And then on page 3, the erase program, it's The acronym is ERACE, but it's spelled SE. So that's just a small correction.
Okay. Anything further?
There's also a spelling error on page 5. The reference to deep-sighted, I think it's CITED.
Okay.
Should we hold questions on the Eversource rates and stuff for later?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're just
Okay.
making sure these are correct, so. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and number 3, correspondence. Number 1, Standing Building Committee minutes. I would first and foremost like to thank Scott Orenstein, who's chair of the Standing Building Committee, to be here this evening. Thank you for coming. I know there was discussion about the relationship of our two factions, and the fact that you're here tonight, very much appreciate it. So I did go through, we all, I'm sure, got the minutes, and we all went through them. So at this point, we're just going to entertain any questions. Scott, I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to bring to our attention, or?
No, just we appreciate you coming to our meetings for all these years, and now we'll reciprocate it. A rotating crew of us, because none of us are as dedicated as you to come to every other meeting, so you'll get to meet the rest of the members of the committee as we go.
It's appreciated because it's a long-standing relationship that goes well before my time. So it goes back to particular Mr. Steve Spurrell, who was the liaison for years. So I appreciate we keep it going. Anybody have any questions or comments on the standing building? Is this going to be the one that we don't have anything for you? Keep coming, really. We'll have some for you. I guess this would be, I was going to bring it up under old business, but I don't know if the GHS turf field, if we're still, I know that there was discussions and there was mediation and everything is moving. I would be more questioning on the schedule of that. Are we still, do we still think that we're, I think in the meeting minutes here, or maybe it was our previous ones, that summer of 2019 was something that was mentioned publicly in these minutes. Are we still tracking towards summer, or is that still realistic?
We are tracking towards full use of the field for the fall athletic season with the opportunity to use it during the summer as well.
Great.
At this point, the 5 other parties have not, we are not signatories on all 5 of the parties. There's some back and forth between 2 of the parties right now. And there's also a non-disclosure agreement that is being pushed on.
Right.
So it is anticipated that will be buttoned up hopefully by the end of this week. Once that's done, and Castle Blues, which is another item that you've been interested in. Castle Blues is putting together the construction phase program. They're going to be our owner's rep on that through the process. So we anticipate that they'll be able to start doing some work, hopefully, early part of March.
Right, weather permitting that's to take up the field, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's much better than what we thought a couple months ago, so.
Yes.
I did have a question.
Go ahead, Ken. Yeah.
I did have a question for Scott, so that your trip was not in vain. Item 10 on the SBC minutes indicates that Mr. Gurnham noted that the Baldwin project is moving forward, and Johnson Controls will become involved starting next week. What does that involvement mean? What will they be doing?
Oh, just final programming, getting it set up to operate.
The same as with the other project.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is one's in design development. We're just going to have to get in there, evaluate what we have, and just keep the systems the same in the new design. We'd like to try to maintain the same systems through all the buildings in the school, so that the guys working on it don't have to learn something new every time they change.
No surprises on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it noted right after that, it's blending with the performance contracting project as well, so there's a synergy there that, you know. Good.
I wasn't going to ask a question, but I will.
Go ahead.
So Scott, on the Cox, on the minutes from the last time, it talks about you want to increase the contingency for the Cox HVAC upgrades to 15% for additional costs related to gaining access to the equipment.
Right.
I clearly don't know much about HVAC upgrades, but the overall budget is 1.2 million. So now we're talking about a 15% contingency for gaining access. What does that? Clue me into why it costs $150,000 to gain access. Whereabouts is this stuff?
Yeah, with the HVAC equipment, a lot of it is rooftop equipment, and the access there is just pull-down ladders, and trying to deal with, very heavy equipment, that's not gonna work, so gonna need to probably build some staging and some supports to be able to gain access to it.
It's not the sort of thing where you just have one of these big bucket lifts come in and
Especially if
pull.
you're coming at it from underneath,
So it's primarily building scaffolding.
Just didn't feel like the current access of pull-down ladders would be sufficient to do this work, so.
And that costs over $100,000.
Well, anytime that you're doing a project and you're doing it at this stage, when you don't even have a design, the numbers are a little bit of guess anyways, so bumping up the contingency, the 15%, we just felt like that. Make sure we have enough money. Basically, we go out for bonding, we get the money for the project, we build the project, and whatever we don't use, we can return. Whereas if we try to build a project and we come up short, then we're kind of stuck. We can't pay people when we get away for every next bond issue, so we always figured we're better to err on the side and make sure we have enough as opposed to coming up short. Matter of fact, these numbers, if you look historically at what we've done on contingency at this stage, we used to be 20% or more on everything. And it was only because we had the needs assessment done back about
6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
We had people kind of come through and evaluate and kind of put numbers to it that we feel a little more confident than we used to, even keeping it kind of 15. So at this point, like I said, we don't even have design.
Okay, so to simplify, and hopefully not to oversimplify then, we've got heavy equipment on the rooftop that needs to be replaced, and so we're going to build scaffolding so we can get up there to remove the old and put in the new.
Either remove, fix, modify, whatever we're going to do.
Okay.
It's
Is that
enclosed-
because the design of Cox is different from other buildings in the district?
As far as the rooftop access, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the other roofs are flat, whereas these are pitched roofs and everything is in there, so it's enclosed. So it makes for a much more difficult replacement, as opposed to just, like you said, just get a crane and you just remove it and put a new one in.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Looks like our first selectman has a comment.
Yes, Mr. First.
I don't know whether you were handed supplements to the Board of Ed packet on the capital project.
Yes.
Taking way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
But the Cox HVAC is listed on page 1, the 15% contingency, and the Guilford Lake School HVAC project is listed with a 20% contingency. So that may be the question, why is one 20 and one 15?
I don't think I got that.
No, it was handed out.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
We had our Board of Ed, Board of Finance joint budget meeting before this.
Thought you might have gotten
And so we got, so some of us got them, some of us didn't. Linda's been racing around trying to get everything to us, but we're good. Thank you. Is there anything else in standing building? Again, Mr. Ornstein, thank you for coming. Very much appreciated. Number 2, Pension Committee minutes. This is of their regular meeting on December 19th. Anything on Pension Committee or on the pension investment report?
Well, just the general observation that they've gone with a new team,
Yes.
and I'm sure they had good reason, obviously good reason to do so, but have the criteria changed? Are they now going to be reviewing things in a different way? It'd be nice to have some kind of introduction to that committee and how it changed, why they made the change and what we may expect going forward, if there are any changes in operations?
Yeah, I don't believe that's the case. I believe, and I know the last couple meetings, you've been just getting the minutes of this. There's been discussion that I think, this is under the purview of the pension committee, and they feel that this is just a prudent move. With the consultant, they meet all the criteria. I believe those criteria were shared with the board and sent to us. Ultimately, it's the pension committee's decision on that. So I think one of the questions or one of the comments that would come up is, well, if we'd like to see what meet the consultants and hear from them, there's probably an opportunity tomorrow morning, right? It's always, well, why don't you come to the pension committee meeting? Was it last Wednesday? The holiday is kind of really messed everything up here. So, Matt, yes.
As the minutes reflect, they are in the preliminary phase of an assessment phase in terms of their pulling together their strategies based on market conditions and forecasts. And they will be presenting a series of recommendations to the pension committee, which is, I'm sure, will be happy to share with you a set of recommendations.
Great. Thank you.
Chairman, I'd just like to add that.
Yes, Mary Jane.
We're also, is also looking to show up in RFP for the actuarial services. Again, just like their consulting services, they're only doing it because they have not done it for some time. There was no issue with either contract that we stood, but they'll be going out for that next. And going through a similar process as they do with the consultants. And
Okay.
again, no change in philosophy or investment strategies at this point.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Matt.
Also note under that same section, actuarial evaluation 8, there has been continued discussion about changing the discount rate. As you know, we've been more aggressive than a lot of other municipalities in moving the assumption, and it's now at 6.5. And this year they're not recommending a change, but they will be coming back. They are continuing to reinforce the need to stay ahead of this. And there will more than likely be some further recommendations to reduce it, but not to apparently not this year.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Pension? Item number 4, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for December 2018. Linda and Gary Kaiser, good evening.
Good evening. How is everyone this evening?
Fantastic.
Cold. Nice to see many or most of you again after
Yes.
meeting previously about the budget.
Yes.
So the December financials you all have from the package Linda provided to you. The numbers themselves are expenditures of $4,450,396 for December, and the year-to-date is down just a little bit as compared to last year. Among the items to note, we received $48,000 in tuition from both Sabre Public Schools, and our transportation amount, regular transportation, was a bit lower. There was essentially one payment that was not made in December while we sorted out, our contract and our just a little bit of growing pains, and it was made this month, so it's a little bit down, just as a matter of timing. And we also have provided you a warrant with $1,813,206 worth of payments. On other notes, we received the superintendent's budget, and we will be having a public forum on the 28th and the 29th to discuss with the public items on it. And we've entered into a final contract with the nurses with essentially a 2% increase for the next 2 years. So that's an overview, and we're here and happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay. Fire away, everyone. I'm trying to look, see what I've got here.
Your minutes from the two board meetings, the last set of minutes indicated that you guys were addressing the problems in bus transportation, and we just heard the superintendent indicate that on some future date you might be needing more buses, perhaps 4 more buses. Is that the number that I heard? I think so.
That was the number that would make significant change to the routes for next year's budget.
For next year's, but
But I don't think they're proposing.
But that's not being
That's
proposed
not, but
at this moment
you feel the adjustments are satisfactory right now
with the existing.
with the existing
Yeah.
fleet?
Yeah.
Correct, and yes.
Okay.
The only item that I saw on the financials, and it's something that every month I bring up, but it's more of a tracking, is the encumbrances on upkeep of buildings and grounds, which is basically, it's fairly typical. The only concern is that with the encumbrances, we're overexpended there, but encumbrances have a tendency of getting canceled. And that will probably be the case this year based on the way the budget's running. So, but that's the only line item that I saw that was of any real concern. Everything else seemed to be fairly in line. I don't know if anyone else had anything on financials.
In the summary, there was the employee benefits line says that the life and disability insurance are higher than the prior year due to billing issues with the carrier in the prior year. So does that mean that this year's number is more accurate than last year's?
Last year, we were behind a number of months at the start of the year, so the timing was way off. But this year, we've been paying them on time.
And they've been billing you on time?
Yes, billing
Right.
us on time.
Right.
We've been paying it on time as well.
Great. How are we looking on tuition? Are we still looking to be over budget on
So
that?
I kind of reported on everybody's spot earlier for tuition. Didn't get any better, that's for sure. We are now looking at almost $700,000 over budget. We will see what the excess cost comes in at. I'm hoping that it's going to come in at a better rate than what I was projecting. We will get that at the end of February. So hopefully when that money comes in.
Did they wind up covering the thing you had to resubmit? I remember you talking about you needed to resubmit.
We file again March 1st.
Okay.
So we're hoping to get it resolved before then. Right now, we still haven't resolved it. We don't understand why they're not paying something when they approved it last year. So we're still working on that one.
And there was no change in the students' requirements? No? Wow.
No.
On the joint meeting that we had, there was just one point here. Ms. Wallace requested that she be provided with a list of the age of the boilers in each of the schools. That was a request that she had, and I know she wasn't able to make it tonight. I'm wondering if that list went out or was sent. That was something that was in our joint meeting. I don't know.
I thought I had sent it out to everybody.
I don't remember receiving it. It doesn't mean, did anybody else get it?
I thought I got an email.
Okay.
I think I got
Was it attached, I know you sent an email out. Was it attached to that?
I believe it was, yes.
Okay,
I
all right.
a bunch of follow-up things, and
Okay.
I believe I attached it to that.
I
It was like the
apologize
day
then.
after or something. It was-
Oh, no, Linda always responds like the day after,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize it was an attachment.
Yes,
Okay. I'll take a look at
If
it.
it's not there, just let me know and I
No,
certainly
I'm
can
sure it
send
is.
again.
I just didn't
Sure.
realize it. Thank you. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Okay. That was the only thing on that. And then,
Linda generally has a 24-hour return or
Uh-huh.
turnaround time.
I know she does. That's why I was surprised, and then I was like, oh. On the, if I could, on the warrants, there was one particular item, page 7. It was on the IB organization. 2019 DIP examination charges. Could you explain a little bit what the $23,000 was for? It says examination charges, but I'm just curious what that's for IB.
As a school system, we elected to equalize essentially what AP charges for its testing that are paid by the parents, students, and IB, which has a larger charge for its end of the year. So we smooth that out by making, and that's the amount of money that to equalize the cost. Something like $105 per test versus $70 per AP test.
So part of that bill is expenses that we have to pay.
Mhm.
Part of that bill will be paid by the students, but the whole bill was due now, so we paid the whole thing, and at some point in the spring, the Student Activity Fund that's collecting all the fees from the students will reimburse us about $17,000 of that
Oh, okay.
invoice.
Okay.
So that'll come back to us.
Okay. Ken, on the warrants?
I have questions on 2 warrants. On page 10, 5th or 6th item down, a tech lease legal fees of $8,500.
Yes, so the lawyers are involved in negotiating the terms of the technology lease. And this year we changed the lawyer, so it was a little bit more work for them to be brought up to speed on the lease and work out the details.
The lease was divided for the same vendor, divided in 2 parts. It was close to $8,000. I think the leasee was Shipman and Goodman, and the $8,500 was tech lease legal fees. The one below that is just legal fees.
So Shipman and Goodwin does other legal work for us, most of it related around special education. So the balance of that was for legal fees for special education. And the $8,400 was for their work on negotiating the technology lease.
And on page 11, 15,000, the 4th item down, $15,500 for food service material,
It's
Medical.
medical.
food service medical.
It's the workers' medical. It's the Unite Here medical
Oh, that's medical.
insurance, yeah.
Yeah, that's their insurance is through their union,
Okay.
not through Anthem like all other
Thank you.
employees.
There was another round of HVAC emergency repairs. How are we doing up there? Or all over there? It's not just one building.
It's all over there. It's not quite as much as previous months.
Well, it wasn't
But-
as cold in November as it is now
Cold,
either,
yeah.
so.
Again, the description, because it defaults in off of the purchase order, they're not necessarily all emergency repairs, they're just repairs. We just had to do another supplement to the PO because we just keep using them to get issues resolved. We have some old systems and we're trying to keep them running. We still have a couple spots that have been reoccurring issues.
And I think what we've been seeing, or what we're about to see, is in our budget books and the bonding, a lot of HVAC projects coming up, not just bonded for this year, but the following years to replace a lot of these systems. So unfortunately, we have a lot of repairs to make on the older systems, but they're being forecast for replacement. So
One of the things that Cliff Burnham said, that now that some of the systems are in place where we can monitor the systems a little bit better,
right.
we're finding parts that are failing that we wouldn't have necessarily known until it had progressed to a further stage. So we're being reactive in fixing those failures as they happen, as we become aware of them, instead of waiting for a more catastrophic failure when we wouldn't have known about these issues before.
And that's a lot of that's based on the performance contracting work that's
Yes.
been going on in replacing and upgrading systems. Yeah. So
And
it's a
the
good thing,
software-
good thing and a
Right.
pro and a con, right?
Yes.
Jeff?
So, the software system that is now used district-wide allows him to monitor the HVA systems in all the schools to try and stay on top of it,
Yes.
or even earlier than he might have been able to previously. Okay.
Ken, I thought you were going to ask this question, but I'll ask it for you, see if you were going to ask it. Operations Committee, on item number 4 about the food service report.
I did, I
Um,
just asked that.
No, that was the medical insurance, but.
Yeah, okay.
The bright spot
See,
was the
I
increase.
know he had it on his list, I knew that. Well, I guess the question is, it was up, but we're still down for the year, but does that mean we're trending we're obviously trending well, does that mean that we're gonna overtake that down for the year as we progress? Does it look?
The food service director is certainly hoping to.
Yeah.
She cut that loss down from $12,000 last month.
Oh, she's already cut it down from that.
Well, it was a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
And so just in the last month, she's made gains on cutting that back.
Good.
She was only
Good.
short year-to-date $112, and she was not happy that she didn't
She didn't
rectify
get to
it
0 or better, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
in December, but she's really hoping January is going to
Good.
put her back in the other direction.
Okay, good.
So now she's making great strides, and she's trying new things and trying to change things and make, find stuff
Mhm.
that really will entice the kids to purchase more breakfast and lunches.
Great, thank you.
Is substituting breakfast for lunch one of those incentives?
Yes, believe it or not, it's a really big seller. Breakfast for lunch is a big seller. The kids like it, so
Mhm.
she's adding more of that in.
It's a
and,
big deal.
Yeah.
Trying things to.
Linda, when I look at the summary numbers for electricity, am I reading that right, that we're about 32% encumbered at this point in the year, and we'd normally maybe be around 50%?
The exact numbers. Well, we should be trending down in electricity.
And is that attributable to the energy performance contract? I'm hoping.
Well, so last year at this time, we had spent $333,000. This year we spent $307,000. So we're a little bit.
But percentage-wise, it might be different, right?
Yeah, so the percentages might be different. I don't have the exact number of what the budget was last year
Yeah.
in here, so I don't have last year's percentage. But we should start seeing some big savings in electricity
Okay.
based on,
I keep looking for them, so I'm thinking that maybe I'm starting to see them now.
they, it should be, but they did say that it could take a while to see the full benefit of the full
Okay.
energy performance contract.
But definitely a little bit of positive there.
Yes, but, keep in mind that weather has been a little
Yeah.
different.
A little more to heat the school the other day.
We're hoping that trend continues.
I think I recall the electricity budget for next year that's being proposed is down a little bit as well.
Yeah, about
So,
8% down.
yeah, so, good trend.
In the energy performance contract, their recommendation was to flat fund electricity because it's the savings from that will pay for the energy performance contract. We did decrease it a little because we felt we were still high
Right.
on keeping it up flat funded.
Good trend.
Anything else for Board of Education?
Just special education buses seem to be down too. Do you expect that trend to remain constant, or is that a billing?
Some of it is billing. Some of the private companies are just slower in their billing. But there has been some change in the way that this bus company bills for certain items than the prior one. So there should be some savings in there that I hope will continue throughout the year. Some of those big companies some of the other private companies are way behind.
So this number's hopefully more reflective of what's going on than just they haven't sent the bills out yet. Okay.
Good? Ken? Anyone else? Okay, with that, do I hear a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of December 2018 in the amount of $4,450,396.37?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, recusals? Thank you, Gary.
Thank
you,
you.
Linda.
Thank you
Gary,
both.
thank you, Linda.
Item number 5, review and approve report of expenditures for town government for December 2018. Mary Jane.
Hello, Mary Jane.
Lots of reports here.
Yeah, before we start, I'd just like to note that on the desk when you came was CAFR, our audit and our single and state and federal single audits. Everything is complete and filed with the state as of the deadline of December 31st. The auditors had hoped to come to the meeting this evening, but ended up with a conflict. They were afraid they would not get here in time. So instead, I have them scheduled for your March meeting, thinking that the February meeting would be loaded with budgets and you probably didn't want additional audit, which if you do, we could maybe change that. But right now, I have them scheduled to come to the March meeting.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody for March?
Sure.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah. We communicated very briefly on that, and I thought, yeah, let's bring it up to the board, so.
Yep, okay.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing I'll note is that all of the budgets have been loaded into board packs, so you should be seeing those. Keep in mind that those are the department requests that you're seeing. The selectmen will just be reviewing them over the next 2 days and most likely making some adjustments to those, but I just want to be sure that you all knew that they were there, that you could start looking at them.
I did have a question on that, and I understand that it's department review. Is there any summary sheets or anything preliminary sheets yet regarding the overall summary?
I thought there was a summary sheet posted, but if there is not...
There might have been. I scanned them all.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So-
just to get an overall read of how all of them come out, because I know all the departments were separate, but I didn't see anything that was a
Yep, I
summary.
apologize if that's not there. We will get that loaded.
It's just to get a snapshot.
Right.
We know it's going to change.
Correct. And we'll not be able to have that by tomorrow morning's meeting, but...
No,
So,
whatever, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay,
yes, we'll get that loaded. No
Thank you.
problem.
okay. Would you like to start with revenue, or
Sure.
whatever your pleasure is?
Yeah. So of course we are, believe it or not, already 50% through with yet another fiscal year. It's amazing how the time flies. And our revenues are slightly lower than last year, but still trending well for the year overall. The building permit fees are up, which is offset by an increase in contracted services on the expenditure side. So you see the expenditures are up, and so are the revenues for the building department. And that's exactly why the need for those contracted services as these projects come through. The fire department is continuing to stay up to date. There's an improved billing process that allows them to fax, scan in, and email and fax bills in to the state, which is allowing us for quicker payments. So month over month, you'll see now that we are pretty much up to date as opposed to being a month behind as we had in the past. Tax collection, slightly less than last year, which is helping to bring that overall percentage down from last year, but still definitely on track to meet our goals for the end of the year. Other than that, if you have any specific questions.
On the renter's rebate, is that just a timing? Does that come in the spring?
The renter's rebate is actually a reduction.
Okay.
We are being charged for the renter's rebate as of last year by the state. Instead of us actually paying the bill, they are taking a credit against any grant funding that they choose. Last year it was taken against ECS, so this year we wanted to make sure we budgeted for that, so that we can absorb that. And $80,000 is approximately what we pay is the cost of that service year over year. So it's not what we're kind of waiting to see what the state does with that at this point.
Golf is down from last year?
Golf is down from last year, mainly a weather issue, at this point. Mm-hmm.
Nothing else on revenue, I don't think.
No, not for me.
Expenses.
First of all, on expenses, I noticed this issue too late to get a new one updated for you this afternoon. But from engineering down, the percent obligated on the 12/31/17 is off by one line item. So if you kind of look at them differently, you'll see that the line items line up percentage to percentage a lot better when you look at it that way. But right now we are, right at 50% of our expenditures, 0.2 higher than where we were last year. Most of the changes from last year to this year, whether higher or lower, are really due to timing of payments that we've discussed over time, specifically human services, planning, zoning, insurance, some of these items that we're paying at a different time of year. Otherwise, our departments are pretty much on track to where each one of them are normally year after year, so we're not anticipating any issues at this time.
I was initially concerned a little bit about public works, and then I realized a lot of that's encumbered, so.
Right.
And
this year
it's
we-
equipment and it's road maintenance.
Public Works and Engineering are not good examples to look at the percentages this year, because we split engineering and Public Works this year because of the new way we are managing those departments. So next year at this time we'll have a clearer look at those.
Yeah.
But yes, the encumbrances do make a large difference in many of the departments.
Yeah, I was just thinking 50% through the year and being at 60%. Yeah, I knew last year, that was a different situation.
They encumber all of their, road programs right away, so that they're sure to get the materials when they need them.
Okay. All right. Anything else on expenditures?
Two general observations as we go into budget season. It seems like building maintenance and office supplies, not every department, but a lot of departments went a little bit over their budget. I'm not saying it's not like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's something maybe just to look at for the meetings tomorrow.
Yep, well, we'll have 2 mornings to go through them.
It was a trend across the board.
We'll keep an eye and bring it up.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I like to look at, 3 to 5 year history of line items. Some items you can't look at that way.
Yeah, it's tough.
But things like office supplies certainly.
Yeah.
I just wonder if they're just under budgeted, like what's they might just be under budgeted.
Matt,
So some of the building maintenance, once you pay for the year, so it's not necessarily doesn't line up with 50% expenditure you're paying it upfront, but it is something that we are keeping an eye on.
okay. Anything else on expenses? Otherwise, I guess we'll go to the warrants. In the special fund weekly, the first one, could you just, the LoSiP duplicate payment, is that exactly what it states there? It's just,
Exactly.
So it was.
What it says, we submitted for the Great Hill Road Culvert Project 2 separate requests for payment, and for some reason, the second request that went in, they combined with the first one and sent us more money, than we were requesting on our paperwork. We do still have some revenue that they owe us, but they wouldn't allow me to bill them any more expenditures before I sent them. I wanted to send them the net, but the state
Right.
wouldn't work that way. I had to send them.
had to be tracked exactly
So
the
I
way
had-
they want it.
I had
Yeah.
to send this
All right.
back, and I have a note in my calendar now that it's back. I can send them a final invoice.
Okay.
I think it's like $38,000.
Mhm.
But it really was just an error.
Okay.
The Castle Booze invoice, as we come to the conclusion, hopefully, of the turf discussions, we expect that consulting expense will go down, or is that, are they going to be participating through the construction of the new field?
Actually, this morning, the Board of Selectmen approved an amendment to the contract for $21,100 for the next two phases, the first of which is a set of documents to guide the construction, and then second, the construction management phase over the life of the reconstruction. It's basically your owner's rep. That is $21,100 was for that piece of work. There's still some money left over in the original contract. I think it's around $3,000. So we'll expend that first. But the Board of Selectmen approved up to $21,100 additional. We don't anticipate expending the full.
So this,
That should put the issue to bed.
okay, so this amount, this warrant amount is not the last one, but it's not going, but there won't be a last one necessarily because it's going to be spent on a different, we're going to expend the last amount of that. See if I can explain this differently.
Those funds will be expended.
They'll be expended, but this is not the last of their payments because it's going to be, there'll be another one, but it's going to be expended on, are they done with their services for the consulting of what they were originally hired for?
We entered into a standard consulting arrangement.
Right.
We are
Right.
adding an amendment to that consulting.
And the amendment is
For a
21-1.
different set of.
Different scope of work. Different scope of work. Okay.
Same contract, just.
Got it. Okay.
But we don't need their involvement. Is their involvement for the negotiation of the resolution of the issues creating the turf field problems and negotiating the settlement that was reached is essentially completed.
It's completed.
Right.
Right. They produced the volume of work that was used for the mediation. That
Helped get us to the result that we got.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else on warrants? We received an update on the Long Hill Road project.
We did.
Yep, this is
Mary Jane?
the
Yeah.
the quarterly reports for Long Hill Road
Mhm.
and our capital funds I provided. I can give you an update on Long Hill Road. I received from our engineer that the final change order will be submitted by the end of the month, which is really just going to reassign the budget numbers to match our expenditures. The contractor's final billing will be in by the end of the month, which represents mostly their the contingency, and the engineers will be working over the next couple of months, but we expect their final billing at the end of March as well. So this project is right now going through its final stages of inspection through the state to make sure that everything's okay. So, but we expect it to come to an end very soon.
These these numbers are reflected in the capital. Yeah, okay. So I'm
Correct.
just
The
I'm going across.
Long Hill Road
Those numbers
here,
are now
yeah.
reflected
The
in the
Long Hill
capital
Road
report you provided.
is one line item in the capital report,
Yes.
but this is just
That's
the
background,
detail behind it.
which we've been looking at over
Mhm.
time, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. The capital reports, always a lot of information. I guess the only question, one of the questions I had when I was trying to read the two capital reports, schools being the first one and the town being the other, the town seems to list total amounts or subtotals.
Oh,
which
yeah, you
I-
had asked about that last time.
I
Yeah,
feel are
sorry.
helpful.
Yeah, right.
And then when I look at the school reports, it's basically just a lot of individual lines with no subtotals. Yeah, probably be a little helpful
Yeah,
to see
I
where the
apologize, you
subtotal
did
is and the
mention that
total
last
amount of
time,
the
and
bond.
then I totally,
Right, and then my
Do it.
my only second question to this is, ultimately, are there, based on what I'm seeing here in some of the projects which are older, or, there's only a little bit left in the fund balance of those, which ones of these are being targeted to basically close out?
We are actually not necessarily closing out any of the projects in either of these two reports this year.
Mhm.
This year, we're closing out some very old projects,
Mhm.
going back as far as 2006-07, that had never been closed out, that I've been working on, over the past year.
Makes sense, you would work oldest to, yeah, okay.
Correct. So
these
since
are gonna
those had
stay
not
open
been.
for a little while longer.
Yeah. Once I get the real old ones done this year, we started looking at it last year, but we made the decision when we went out last year to bond to hold those projects so that we were 100% sure of our numbers, because once we close them out, we're done. So we'll be looking to close those out this year, and then my goal is to try to keep up with them, which just hasn't been done in the past. So I'd like to keep up with them. I'm in contact with the whomever is in charge of the projects to try to see where all of the projects stand, whether or not, what money they think they have left over, whether we have some other use for the money that could save us something, maybe in our capital. But we'll be looking to close them out, hopefully every year or so, to close at least one or two out.
Where do the balances go generally, or typically, if you have a little credit in a project?
Well, if there's money left over that we haven't bonded, that if it's authorized but not bonded, then it's just closed
Then you
out.
just wouldn't borrow,
Correct.
right?
If we've bonded slightly more than we've used, if that's what you're
Yeah,
asking,
yeah.
then through the closeout process, the selectmen will reallocate that money to something that needs money. So if a project has a balance of, $50,000 in it, and another project needs
Something
$50,000,
running
the
behind.
selectmen will move that. So instead of bonding another 50, we'll move that money somewhere else. So that's how these other older ones are like that. Some of them have money left, and some we actually have to bond for the bottom line of all of those projects because we need to refund ourselves. But all the
Okay.
projects
So
will
mostly
be
from
realigned.
project
Yes.
to project?
Mhm,
Okay.
From project to project.
Okay.
And it's just a very straightforward resolution passed by the Board of Selectmen that makes those realigns. The original resolutions that we approve allow the selectmen that autonomy to go back and do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on capital reports? And we'll shift over to medical.
So we had another low month in our paid claims, due in part to our catastrophic claims. You can see those have really blossomed this year a lot quicker than last year, which we anticipated, which is why our coverage increased. So we're seeing a shift from our regular claims into the catastrophic. So it's showing low on one end but high on the other end. So overall, the claims are still there.
Are you able to tell us how many claims there are? Are you allowed to?
I can tell you how many. I actually brought it with me, just in case you ask. There aren't a lot. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. That $9 million represents 4 claims.
900,000.
The 900,000, sorry, 900, and then 1, 2, 3, and then there are 3 others that are over the 75, but under the 150. Yeah, one of them is literally over the 150 by $41, but it is over. So there are few claims, but high dollars. And I couldn't tell you who or what they are, even if I wanted to. I don't have access to that information.
No, I was just wondering.
Yep.
That's what I was curious about.
Chairman?
Yes.
Stop loss. I had the pleasure of attending a CCM gathering last week, and some information was shared with me about a consortium, Connecticut Prime it's called, which is a consortium of 13 municipalities that provide their own stop loss insurance. They are all self-insured towns, the contention was they got off to a rocky start because they had some bad premium years right out of the gate, and they didn't have any reserve built up. But I've tasked Mitch Goldblatt with looking at that particular organization to see whether or not it makes some sense to change. We've also reached out to Joe Spurgeon, our insurance consultant, on that to give us some pros and cons about potentially changing, moving away from Anthem. His initial reactions are one of concern based on the overall size of the risk pool associated with the 13 member towns versus Anthem's stop loss pool, which is huge. But in response to some questions last year about stop loss stuff, I thought it would be prudent for us to take a look at what some of the other opportunities are out there for stop loss. We're also going to, Joe Spurgeon is also going to provide to us some options on moving the 150 bogey up or down. Okay.
It's good. Options are good. Anything else on medical? I think that covers everything for item number 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll stay up here for the rest of the items. So, item number 5.
Or I can go back and sit.
No, stay up here, Mary Jane.
Get a little workout.
Before you move on, once again, it looks like we're going to be in a position of having a significant increase to the fund balance in that line item. So this board may want to consider what we do about that towards the end of the year. Just want to remind you that the Board of Education last year, when we saw a surplus of that size, did not make a payment the last month. So just a heads up, if that trend continues, we're going to continue to add to that reserve account. So just for...
Yeah, now that we're 50% through the year, as we get closer to the end of the year, should be considered, absolutely. Okay. Thank you. So with that, do I hear a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of December 2018 in the amount of $2,498,856?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, recusals? Okay. Item number 6, set interest rate for Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Program. we received a memo that actually covers both of the next two items. So what I will do is I will just take the moment to read this. The Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Plan requires that the Board of Finance set the interest rate annually for those deferring their taxes. It is my recommendation that the rate of 2.87% be used for fiscal year 2019-2020. I should note that this is a memo from Mary Jane. That was dated January 14th. It's not my recommendation. This rate represents the current 20-year spot yield for AAA-rated general obligation municipal bonds as reported by Municipal Market Data, which is a subsidiary of Thomson Reuters. Anybody have any questions or comments on that before I request or ask for a motion, which I will read?
The number of applicants this year is down. It's the lowest.
That's the next
That's the
separate.
Yep.
That's going to be a good question, but
Yep,
you'll hold
we're
that for the
going to
next
go
one.
right to that question.
Do we know how many people are on the first one? The
You
one that
know,
we're about to set the rate at 2.87? It's
I
not a big
apologize, I
number,
don't,
right?
no, it's not a big number, and I don't have that information with me, I apologize.
Okay.
I can send that out to you guys.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on my reading that, do I hear a motion to set the interest rate for the Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Plan at 2.87% for fiscal year 2019-2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 7. Right, before I go, I'll go to the agenda, just make sure. Item number 7. From the same memo from Mary Jane dated January 14th, 2019. Pursuant to section 247-27A of the Elderly Tax Relief Program Ordinance, the aggregate benefit should not be set at less than 0.5% of the fiscal year 2018-2019 total budget of $97,460,807 or $487,304. In order to avoid prorating the benefits of those approved for the program, the Board of Finance has set the cap at a level to cover the full amount of benefits approved as shown in the table below. We have a table that shows the last 9 years. Although the full cost of the program for fiscal year 2019-2020, based on the 2018 grand list, cannot be calculated until after the application process is completed on May 15th, 2019. It is my recommendation that the cap remain at $1,100,000. Jeff, do you have any questions?
It seems to me that this number's a little lower than it has been historically, so any reasons why? Or do we need to make an adjustment based on the reduced participation?
Well, based on this past year's participation of 788 as opposed to the 812, I originally was going to bring down, come down a little bit, $1,050,000 or so, but I wasn't sure if maybe that was an anomaly year. It seemed to drop a lot for some reason. Change isn't typically such a large swing. So that's why I was kind of leaving it the way it was. Really what your number does is allow all residents who want the relief to be allowed to have it. If it's dropped and more people come, then we end up prorating. So
We were in that position once before of going over the cap and we had to make an adjustment, so.
right.
We don't want to.
Haven't done that.
We don't want to be in that
We
position.
we haven't done that in the past few
The
years.
difference was, that's when we were on the growth curve to ramping this program up. As you can see, we've been relatively consistent around 800 to 815 or 820 over the past 8 or 9 years. I think traditional mortality tables come into play here. There's a natural group that's going to age off, if is a polite way to say it. And the expectation is there should be another group coming in to replace those that age out of this program. But that's a pretty big swing. That's 20, what's that, 20,
24, a change, a delta of 24, which we haven't seen since 2012.
I think I would like to make my annual comment on the ETRP. I do love this program. As I understand it, the tax base is really going to pay a little bit more in their taxes to help out some of our elderly residents so that their taxes are a little bit less. And I think it's a great program. There is a income limit so that hopefully the right people are benefiting from the program. But I've always felt that there's an Achilles heel to this program and that there's no asset test. So I've abstained each year because I don't want to stand in the way of the program, just to make a point that I feel like there should be an asset test, and that residents who are participating, if you live in a $2 million house, maybe you might forego the program, and even though it's a small increase on the rest of the taxpayers.
Okay, thank you for that. I was looking at this and thinking the same thing. Does it knock down a little bit? But when you look at the number of applicants, if it starts for any reason we have a blip year and it goes back up to 815 or 819, then we're getting close. We're getting back up there. We don't want to be in a position where we're getting too close to that. I have no issue with keeping it where it is. I don't know if anybody else does. And if not, what I will do is I will just put this in the form of a motion, and that would be to maintain the aggregate benefit cap of the Elderly Tax Relief Program ordinance at $1,100,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have item number 8, committee reports, building permits. Building permit committee, I know they're working towards a goal. Our member of that, or liaison, is not here tonight, so we will entertain that question next meeting. Old business, item number 9. What I wanted to do is, because last meeting we talked a little bit about the joint budget meeting we had with the Board of Ed prior to the meeting last month in December. We also had the same meeting this evening. We started a little bit earlier because there was more to discuss. We have the budget books. I wrote a bunch of notes in my book, and it's behind me, and I don't know if I feel like getting up from my chair and going to get it, but I think we had a pretty productive meeting. If I recall correctly, the superintendent's budget that has not been looked at by the Board of Education yet, or it's been looked at but not discussed, is coming in at a 2.47% increase. It is one of the lower ones that's come in over the last many years, at least that I can recall. And I think there's a lot of detail to it, but the 3 main cost drivers that were discussed by the superintendent had to do with salary line item being about $1 million in total increase. Special education, which we're seeing, as we discussed tonight, there is a shortfall in the budget of special education, and that's really ultimately being made up in the budget next year, for next year. And those are the 2 increases. The good news is that the medical line item has gone down about, I believe it's about $200,000 or $250,000. So when it comes right down to it, it's about a 1.4 million % increase, or the 2.47%. I'm doing a real quick, brief overview of that meeting. We got our binders. We've been reading through them. We, as I said, met with the Board of Education, and it was a very fruitful discussion. And very helpful, as it is every year. I don't know if anybody else would like to chime in, who is in attendance. But
A couple of brief comments.
Jonathan, go ahead.
I thought this budget was exceptionally conservative, and it just shows how hard they're working on a budget. And of course, they talk every year about some of the benefits we're deriving from the Board of Education and its decisions. Yet I still look for savings. The opportunities are few. and far between in such a well-crafted budget, but I still want to keep an eye on capital spending and whether we can govern that spending and pace our capital spending so that we have some savings there. And then a possible strong consideration, given the retirement of a beloved associate superintendent, Ann Keene, that maybe we adopt a model that has one superintendent and maybe one assistant superintendent going forward, which I believe was the status quo just 5 years ago. So those were some areas in the budget where I thought there was some possibilities for savings.
Thank you. And there's going to be, oh, Ken, go ahead. Yeah.
So it looks like if you look at the town before preliminary cuts by the Board of Ed in the town, it looks like about 3.5% overall is what's being requested on the first pass before anybody, excluding any bonding items. I think I'm pretty, I just went through and added up the preliminary. So how does that compare, do you recall, with the numbers we got last year and the year before, prior to the selectmen making their cuts and the Board of Ed making their cuts before it gets to...
I believe on the town side, it's lower than it has been. The initial numbers are lower than it's been coming in for some time. On the Board of Ed side, they came in, I think, lower. They were lower last year. They had a very, their budget was what, 1.87 last year or something like that by the time they got done?
Yeah.
So I think they were in the 2 range, or just over 2 range when they started. So, and I think our number, if I'm not mistaken, our preliminary numbers, our department level numbers were, what, 7% on the operating budget last year? On the first set of numbers? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they had a new mark in town hall that they were after. But, and those numbers are gonna come down, obviously. And we're looking for your advice and assistance. That's why these.
No, I wasn't trying to be critical.
I know you were. Yeah, but I want
it looks like first cut is 3.5% versus what I think was higher.
Because I was looking for this, that's why I had asked for the summary sheet before, because we got the school number, but I was wondering what the town is. But we also know that the Board of Ed still has to look at the superintendent's budget. Board of Selectmen have a lot of work to do in terms of the department, and so.
What's the initial bonding as of now on the Board of Ed side? It's 3 million. Is the town going to be looking?
The Board of Ed
for?
looks more like 7 million.
Yeah,
for
so
the 2 years.
That's over 2 years.
2 years.
That's 2 years.
Yeah.
For 2
There-
years. Ken, you were right. For the first year was 3%, or 3 million, rather, 3 million, and then 4
on the back end.
During
the second one, and
during
we've
our
got
discussions, we spoke about, or actually, the board and superintendent spoke about how to go about the bonding, whether it's a 1-year or a 2-year bond, and they're really going to follow the lead, I believe, they said, with the town, and what the town numbers are, and then obviously this is going to be a discussion about who and what gets bonded, and is it a 2-year or is it a 1-year? I don't know if there's any input you could provide regarding the bonding the town plans to do.
Yeah,
or
right now we've got a little over $3 million for a 2-year bond package, but that also we have, I think we brought our operating capital back up. Right now it's at 1.15, I think, but that's again subject to change from the Board of Selectmen, and clearly not the last project. Because as you recall, I think we dropped about 850,000, and we had been talking about on this board at least a bogey of around $1 million a year on the town side for capital. So 1150 is a little bit more than that. So I can see some adjustments to that. So, and the thing is, as you recall, the town did not bond anything last year. The town has been consistently on a 2-year cycle. And the Board of Education, I believe, did bond something last year.
Yes.
But their needs, I'm not a cheerleader for the Board of Education, but their comprehensive facilities study that they did almost 10 years ago is now coming home to roost. So.
And we need to take care of the buildings we have, and we knew that, so absolutely no surprise. But and a lot of that 7 million, and we kind of alluded to it, is a lot of it is infrastructure in these schools. It's not, It's not, painting and putting the quote-unquote pig on a lipstick, right? I mean, this is like serious infrastructure, HVAC work that needs to get done to keep our schools running.
Agreed, and we don't
We don't have much data yet, full data on the revenue side, but I think you can safely assume we're going to be looking at $200,000 to $250,000 more in finance revenue on our deposits on record. Right now, I think we're 181 over. Was still so that number could climb north of 250. So I think this year you're going to see some revenue side increase on local department revenue, which we haven't seen in quite some time. The state is still a crapshoot. You guys are going to have to make some assumptions there. Be happy to help you with those. So.
Mary Jane.
I just wanted to, Tracy made note that the summaries that you're looking for are in your library. So if you go into Board Pack and look in your library, you'll find the summaries.
Great.
They're not
Thank you.
they're not embedded in the agenda,
Okay.
but they're there.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else that you want to see differently, just let me know. But the initial summaries are there.
Is there anything else under old business before I go to number 10 and just a couple items under new business?
One quick question.
Go ahead.
I don't know where we stand with it. We talked about talking about using a new auditor at some point, and we waited too long in the year, once or twice, to do that. Is it on your agenda at some point to at least have a discussion so that we don't have to wait another year if we want to talk about it?
It's a yes. It's been on the agenda.
Okay.
My agenda, and it's one of the discussions that right now, with the fact that we have the audit and that we have the auditor still coming in.
I'm not saying no, I'm just saying we don't want to get...
We don't want to wait.
We don't want to miss the window.
I think it would be good to have a discussion about it and have it on the agenda, but I would venture to say that we should probably wait until after the auditor
comes and talks
to us. It just.
But we have enough, I don't recollect what month it was.
What do we have for?
You have to appoint the auditor 90 days before the end of the fiscal year.
So
if you're going to go out to RFP.
So we don't have a big window then?
If you're going to go out to RFP, you have to do it shortly.
Your window is now.
Yep.
This is what the past couple of years, we've gotten,
Well, last year.
we've waited, was it just last year? I thought it was
Just last year. The previous year, we had done it, and we had done the RFP. So this would be their third year, I think, on that contract, right?
Right, because I did the RFP was like one of the first things I did, so that was only 2 years ago. But yes,
So
our
we will
window
have-
of
We will
opportunity
only
is
have
definitely
2 more
closing.
meetings then prior to that window closing.
Well, not really. I mean, because you got
Unless
to
we
have
have
the RFP, and then you got to have the responses, and then you got to make a selection. So
No, I said we're only going to have 2 more Board of Finance meetings prior
but-
to the window closing.
correct, which goes to the point of.
I mean, maybe
getting
we don't want to
another-
talk about it, I just know that we've talked about it and we missed the window, and at some point I think
Right.
we should talk about it.
Well, now would be the time to talk about it. In my opinion, there are not many auditors out there that we could. Bloom Shapiro has been doing a very good job for us. I think if we go back out, we're opening up somewhat of a Pandora's box, because there's only so many auditors. There's those that are Bloom Shapiro and others that do municipal, and then there's others that have done like 2 municipalities or 1 municipality. There's not many out there. I guess we could have that debate or conversation about whether or not we get another auditor and how much of a difference it's going to make. Is it something we really want to go forward with? I think that Bloom Shapiro has been doing a good job. I don't know if having another set of eyes is really going to make a difference when they're probably one of the biggest and most well-known of all the auditors that are doing this. And we are challenged with the fact that we might actually shoot ourselves in the foot by getting proposals back that are more expensive than what we're getting for services now. So if Bloom Shapiro is very competitive and others are competitive, they may say, well, you know what, that's what the number was, and now your numbers are going to be higher. We have a couple more years before we go back out, but they're one of the best out there. Having somebody who hasn't had the municipal experience that they've had, I think could be more detrimental than advantageous. But I know that you and Veronica, I think, have both indicated interest or concern.
I thought it was more than just, I thought there was a larger number of people. So I agree with everything you said. I thought that most of us were sort of, so I agree with you that it certainly could be, create new problems. However, having said that, I think we all agreed that it's good to change it up at some, we haven't ever done it, and it's good to get fresh eyes and fresh faces in the process and let them go through and see what's going on to make sure that everything is as we think it is. And it's sort of it's not an easy thing to do. We did go out and we only got 2 other firms, I think, that were interested. And
yes,
the rates were, then one had some experience and one didn't have much experience. The rates were relatively comparable to what we're currently paying these people. Look, I don't have a problem with Blum Shapiro. I just think that at some point, it's the same, we went through this before. I think at some point it would behoove the town to, even if you only do it for 1 or 2 for 2 years, to have somebody new come in and go through your books. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. So I don't disagree with anything you just said. I just think it's a good practice to, maybe even, if it didn't cost so much, then you could have 2 people do it simultaneously, so you don't have to, get rid of Bloom Shapiro. Maybe that's, I don't know.
Well, I think having our finance director would probably be what are your thoughts, Mary Jane? Please.
I could go either way, as we've had this conversation before. The same reason the pension committee is going out for RFP, they're doing it not because they're unhappy, but because they think it's at least the opportunity to review what they're doing. You do review that every 5 years, so you're at least looking at that. But the only point I wanted to make, and I don't know if it makes a difference to anyone, is when we threw this new contract 2 years ago, we do have a whole new team from Bloom Shapiro working. Nicoletta is still the partner, although she's relatively new to Guilford as well. But we did have a whole new team. We had brand new people, which made it difficult my first year because they were brand. I was hoping to get the same people, so it was easier the first year. But so we do have new people, and every year now that I've done 3, we've had new support staff there, so they do change their staffing that comes to us. I don't know if that makes a difference. I didn't know that 2 years ago when I first came here, but they have done that each year, changed up their staff.
That's typically what auditing firms do, is they will change the managing partner on the account, so there's a fresh set. They provide a fresh set of eyes, so it's not the same people. The other thing is they traditionally run their newer employees through as the feet on the street. So it's not unusual for Mary Jane's team to get a whole new team of young auditors come in on a year-by-year basis. Now, they all follow a prescribed methodology, traditional practices, auditing practices. So, the question of, does a new set of eyes really make all that much difference? I don't know. But I do know that typically when confronted with situations like this, auditing firms, this happened at the last place I was at, they had a rule, an audit partner could only be on an account for 3 years at a time. So you might want to consider something along those lines if you don't go through with the process of issuing another RFP, requiring an audit partner change on a 3-year basis or even more frequently. And I just want Mary Jane not to, well, I am going to countermand what you said. the pension committee changed, went out because they were dissatisfied with the process that had happened. They'd had the same folks for a number of years who left the firm, left Wells Fargo, and moved to another firm, and they weren't sure they wanted to follow to that new firm. So it's a combination of things. Yes, they'd had the same advisor for a long time, but they moved firms and they didn't think, they weren't comfortable with that, so. That would sort of like us following Nicoletta to another firm.
So let's put it this way. I want everyone to weigh in as they want to. You know, in my mind, whatever the majority of the board feels, if we need to go back out, if that's, you know, what everyone feels. I have no real position one way or the other, obviously, but I just, you know, based on what I know about what they've been doing and what we might get back, I have some reservation in going back out. But if this board on the majority feels that we should go back out for an auditor to check numbers or whatever, if that or the answer regarding issues and, you know, maybe changing up their team, if it's not, you know, it's still the same auditor, but there's different people that are involved, if that is something that we want to make sure that takes place, you know, we can make sure that happens. But I want to, you know, look to the majority of the board on what their thoughts are.
Well, how quickly can we get an RFP out if we decide to do this?
Fairly quickly. I mean, we just did it a couple of years ago. We just need to update some of the GASB information to bring it up to where we currently are. But, you know, you could probably get it out in a couple of weeks. And we're in the middle of budgets right now, so I can't say I get out tomorrow. But fairly quickly.
So we currently have a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract? 5, right?
Five.
Renewable, they're all renewable 1-year contracts.
Which is
but
why
we bid
every
it out
year
for
we have
5
to
years.
approve
And
them.
one other thing that I didn't mention is, we went back to Bloom Shapiro and they matched the low bidder on that contract, so, on the proposals.
Right.
So,
I'd stay with it for another year.
Sorry, I'm completely
The
neutral.
results that change some of the people. I don't see any compelling
I'm
need
not
to
going
change
to
this.
jump up and down saying it has to be done now. If everybody, I think at some point, maybe bringing in a new partner is, but again, once again, we're a little bit earlier than we were last year when we talked about it.
Right.
But we're also now in the middle of budget season and we only have 2 more meetings and there's a lot going on. And so
Right.
I think at some point within, you know, I wouldn't wait 5 years. I feel that it should be done at some point. Even if it's, you know, if it's 1 year, 2 years, and then you go back. I think it should be done.
I agree.
Would that preclude, I think I'm saying that right? I mean, if we want to change auditors, then that would, I mean, if that's the intent, then Bloom Shapiro basically shouldn't necessarily respond to this.
What do you mean respond to this in terms of
I mean,
I
giving?
see it differently. I see it
How do you see
like,
it?
it's sort of it's like a self-evaluation process, kind of. Like Bloom Shapiro could come back and bid too, and they could still be the best. But it's almost like a good practice to kind of just evaluate, okay, these are our contractors, these are our vendors. Let's put it out there to see what's out there, and they could still come back and be the best, and we could still go with them.
That's a good point.
That's what we did just 2 years ago.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my question really is just, do we do it now or do we do it a little bit later?
If we accept, I mean, if we accept them this year and or next year, and then there's 1 year left in the, I mean, it's kind of like, well, why even wait another, if we don't do it at this point, and you wait until there's only 1 year left in the, why not just wait for that next year and let them fulfill that 5-year contract and just approve them, or accept them to that point, but.
Well, we have a rolling 1 year.
Right.
It's not really, you're not breaking the contract by not renewing.
No, you're not breaking it, but you're so close to the end of it anyway, so. But, Matt?
Yeah, and I would give yourself some flexibility if you are going to go back out to bid. I'd give yourself some flexibility in terms of the decision criteria, because traditionally most municipal bids are lowest responsible bidder. And the art is in defining what lowest responsible bidder is. If you wind up with 2 responses and one of them has only done 2 municipalities, ever, but they're 25% lower than Bloom Shapiro, have you just locked yourself into going with that other individual? So build yourself the criteria, and we can certainly have Pam Millman talk to you about what language you need to use to give yourselves that kind of flexibility. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we had the option of 5 years. If we went back out to RFP, would the option, is it 5 years again? Is it another?
Go up.
We could go for a year, 2 years.
It's our choice.
Your call.
Yeah.
Whatever we
But you
want.
could still go out now, every
And-
year, right?
Right, and you might look a little foolish, you could go out, get the bids back in and say, we're not acting on it, we already have one in place. You have that flexibility.
They may not bid another time, but.
Just think more information better, but.
So it sounds like we should wait,
But then you're saying we have one more year left.
No, we have 2.
You have 2.
We have 2. This is where we'd be accepting for a 3rd year.
I don't think Bloom Shapiro is going to be offended. I don't think you're going to burn any bridges or
They
do
get
it back. I think
shot.
they're going to understand completely.
It's part of business, they get shopped like
Yeah,
everybody
that's-
else.
It's not because we're dissatisfied with what they've done.
No, it's a good practice to examine it period.
So we do it next year.
I would prefer to do it next year.
All right.
I have no problem.
That's a deal.
Raise the issue earlier.
Yeah.
Like do it next
Well, we
summer.
knew this was about the point to do it, so I'm glad you brought it up
So,
for discussion, so.
In a perfect world, we would be out to bid right now.
right, you got to start the process a little earlier than
So
this.
we'd start it in like the summer.
No, we could,
November.
no, we
Well,
could,
I mean, we would remind ourselves in the summer to get, right?
yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
since June, I think, when we had to, well, no, we had the 90 days, but then we were late. I think starting in June or July, we were actually talking about, okay, let's remind ourselves. So I'm glad the discussion came up regarding that. And I think when it comes to October, November, maybe it's something we go out for prior to getting into the thick of, now we're really kind of in the thick of budget season and going over all that. And we look at it in November, December.
Don't need to rush it.
And then we can make a decision, around this time, as opposed to waiting until closer to the 90 days. So we have more time. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for that. On item number 11,
I
sorry.
had one other.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I saw a bunch of people were exercising their First Amendment rights in front of Town Hall not too long ago. Any updates on the ongoing saga of Simon the dog?
Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up. I was looking forward to the question. Yes, there was a rally in front of Town Hall 2 Saturdays ago, I guess now. The interesting phenomenon of that rally, as well as the individuals who have reached out to our offices, me specifically, including some of my personal forms of contact. I would say it's 98% non-Guilford residents. This is not a Guilford cause. It's not a Guilford celebrity kind of thing. I think that speaks to the confidence that the community has in our police department, the animal control officer, and the underlying process. To answer your question, there is no movement at all. We had the hearing, the statutorily defined hearing back in the end of August. It was not completed within the first day. There was a star-studded cast of witnesses that day. If you ask me later, I'll be happy to tell you who they are. And it was not completed. In the interim, and this is now a matter of public record because the other party violated the confidentiality agreement, not agreement, but the confidentiality conditions between the first hearing date and the scheduling of the continued hearing. The Department of Agriculture had reached out to both parties for a mediation session, but it came with a confidentiality requirement. Just prior to that confidentiality requirement, that meeting, in fact, on a Friday when we had the meeting scheduled for on Monday, the other party filed a federal suit against the Department of Agriculture. So until such time as that suit is satisfied or settled, the Department of Agriculture is probably not going to move on this case one way or the other. So, and I think you've heard me say, on the advice of counsel, I, the Board of Selectmen, nor any other department or individual in the town has the ability to intercede on the statutorily defined process of decision-making with the animal control officer. So
we're waiting for the federal court to
we're waiting for a
make
federal court
decision.
case right now. Yep. And how's that for telling your story without talking about the merits of the case?
Well done.
I think Pam will be happy with me.
Anything else under old business? Okay, item number 10 is new business. I just wanted to mention that, as you've heard a couple of different times tonight, the Board of Selectmen have their department workshops tomorrow morning and Thursday morning, which I believe all, if not most, if not all, of the Board of Finance members attend to get more information on the departments. And I did want to just make sure it was clear that our next regular meeting is going to be the presentations by the town and the Board of Education regarding their budgets that have been at that point looked at by the Board of Selectmen and vetted out, and as well as the Board of Education looking at the superintendent's budget. Those will be presented on Thursday, February 14th. That will be our next regular meeting. And I think that date is based on our statutes.
Calendar to get us to the referendum date.
Correct. So I just want to make sure those dates were out there. At least we know about the department workshops tomorrow morning, the 23rd, and Thursday, the 24th. But unfortunately, February 14th has some significance for many of us. But that's going to be the night of our regular meeting. So, and it'll be jam-packed with excitement, with presentations by the. That's right. By the town and by the Board of Ed. So, anything else under new business? Yes.
Two pieces. One,
It's good for old business, but I referenced it earlier when I talked about the potential growth in the excess revenues or excess funds in the medical line item account. In deference to my former colleagues on this board, I would like this board to consider at budget time the use of some of those funds to fund the OPEB account, the other post-employment benefits, which we approved. The board approved $200,000 to start that fund, and we just talked about going out for an actuarial on that. You saw some discussion on that earlier. So, given the comments that were made that some feel it's most appropriate to move these monies during the budget season, I'd like for you to start to consider that as an opportunity during this upcoming budget season, which we're right in the middle of. The second thing I'd like you to know is the Board of Selectmen, and we'll probably do this after the workshop hearing on Thursday, but the Board of Selectmen will be voting to enact a deferment of taxes and interest for federal employees who live in the town of Guilford. The legislature earlier today passed a statute that revised the laws around deferments and interest. As you may or may not know, there's a state statute, and no matter who comes to the door, if they're late paying their taxes, we have to charge them the applicable interest. No governing body within the town has the right to defer or to waive those things. So this legislation was very narrowly crafted to accommodate the shutdown and the federal employees. It is my hope that the Board of Selectmen on Thursday will vote to approve this program.
So is it approving a state town-created program that the town then adopts, or does
No,
the town
the
create
ta-
its
the
own
ta-
program?
The town will adopt their own. It's up to the town to adopt it individually. There are some requirements, evidence of eligibility requirements built into the statute, so that will be consistent across the state. So, but every town has the right to enact that ordinance or pass that, to create that deferment program. It's not an ordinance, it's the creation of a deferment program. As you well know, the state dictates to the municipalities what powers we have, and they have just granted us an exemption from one of their other limiting statutes.
This would apply to residential, motor vehicle, and personal property taxes?
Absolutely, all the above. The likelihood of it being of significant impact is pretty low for a variety of reasons. The first of which, most people have, many people, or most people have their taxes collected through escrow accounts. Those payments have already been made. In addition, we are now 8 days away, 5 business or 6 business days away from the end of the non-penalty period for paying your second half payments, so a substantial amount of that money has already been collected, and we anticipate the biggest opportunity would be on supplemental motor vehicle stuff. So we don't anticipate it's going to be of significant amount of money, and there are provisions. It has to be repaid in full. It has to be repaid in full within 60 days of the cessation or the return to work of that employee, and it's on an employee-by-employee basis. So if a employee, they change the rules, and tomorrow they pass, it says half of those people are going back to work, those people would have then 60 days from the day they go back to work to make their payments. More than you wanted to know?
So it's giving the towns the opportunity to waive the interest and defer the payment.
Defer payment and waive the interest associated with what would normally have been a late payment.
Great.
And again, narrowly crafted only for federal employees in this particular shutdown.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 11, public forum. With that, no public forum. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. See you tomorrow morning.
Revenue estimates. Joe, I think I heard you say that the numbers that were presented here, which showed a 2.37% increase, are inclusive of the anticipated grand list growth, the revenues from anticipated grand list growth?
Talking about revenue?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that includes the 323 at the current tax, at the current mill rate. Secondly, this board reduced the cap on the elderly tax relief program.
Right.
And is that also accommodated in those numbers?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then the ECS, you mentioned 15% reduction from the January adjusted number, right? Not the original projected number?
Right. That's after we received a reduction of 171,000.
1,000 in January,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So I think Ken pointed out at your meeting, it's actually a 20% discount
No, right.
from our
The
original number.
previous
Yeah.
year, you're right. And then one last question, the salaries at 1.9%, is that inclusive of what we have in reserve for personnel or
Yes.
not? It is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Anyone else?
I have a quick question, and I'll save some for Thursday, but in a lot of the vehicles that we have, you had mentioned